saying that me being here in Israel and just everything that's going on, it's like it's important to understand that like spirituality from a Jewish context is not just it's not just like it's not just like a spiritual like high. Like I was just talking to some people today that I've been learning with, and they were kind of like thinking about this idea of like wanting to like convert and this type of thing, and they were like saying like the Rabbanud and this like what could we do for them type of a thing. And I told him, I was like, you know what, the reality is like this. It is where I see a lot of people get stuck at, right? It's like the thing is, it's like yes, there's this aspect of intellectual, spiritual connections, and there's an aspect of community, right? Whether you create the community yourself, right, or you live, in a place that has an existing community. Whatever it is, the point is just saying community is a big part of it, right? And some of the guys, it wouldn't really matter for you guys, people I know, because whatever, people get married, whatever, but you guys are already married. But I know guys that like went through like whatever normative conversions, whatever. And I noticed that a big challenge that they have is that aspect of adapting into the community phase, and these types of personalities would have issues with that anywhere. You know what I'm saying? But there's such a focus on it in the Jewish community of being married and having a family that that issue that they have, they really have to confront it, and it's difficult, right? Now, another element, and potentially one of the most important elements that's also difficult, is the connection to the land of Israel, right? Because it's like it's all connected, like the Torah, the the community, and the land of Israel, right? It's like a package all together, right? And all of them are obtained through difficulty. I mean, not so much community, but Torah and in the land of Israel to connect, right? So as because there's so much conflict and there's so many things going on, it's important to kind of like have a little bit of education on like what's going on and talking about it, and then going and also doing the normative share, right? And those are together because learning about the land of Israel. So it's a little short video. I think is it's kind of like basically we talked about it a little bit earlier today, but it's a little like it's like 3 minutes or something like this. But the point is just saying it gives um, a pretty good background on the conflict itself. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Okay. All right. Let me see where we at. Okay, here we are. Okay, hold on. Okay. All right, so this is just a little video just on the name and this, whatever, because it's like it's such a big concept. And the thing is, like we're in a place like because we're learning contemporary rabbis, and so we can look at real life, right? We can look at things that are going on right now and look at it from what's going on halakhically, what's the system with, because part of the unraveling, part of seeing the true substance, right, and form of substance of things, it's like we have to peel back, the illusion, and part of that illusion is kind of like the information we receive and this or whatever. But hold on. All right. All right, cool.
Has nothing to do with Arabs
Oh, that was annoying.
or Muslims, and everything to do with Jewish history.
Uh, bro, what's going
When
on?
we were expelled from our land by the Romans, the
Wait, so this
Romans,
is like,
2,000 years back, they wanted to disconnect the
alright, so let's forget. I know what the problem is. It's because I'm on this thing now. All right, fine. We'll just pick up. It's 18 seconds in. We can figure it out.
Connection between the Jews and their land. So at that time, in the ancient world, the land was called the land of Judea. And the Romans that controlled the whole ancient world, they said, we are going to change the name from Judea to Provincia Palestina. And this name, Palestina, was given to the land by the Romans hundreds and hundreds of years before Islam and before Arabs left the area of Saudi Arabia. And it was in the context of the Jews. And throughout the 2,000 years of exile, everybody knew that the name Palestine refers to the Jewish land
of Israel.
You know, before Israel, there was a Palestine soccer team, or all Jews. You go to Encyclopedia Britannica, you see Palestine, it's with Magen David.
I see.
You know, it's only in the late 60s, in the 20th century, that the Russians, together with the local Arabs, started pushing the idea of Palestinians. Because since until then, Palestinians were, it was referred to the Jewish state. You know, when the British were given a mandate, we talk about the British mandate. What was this mandate? What mandate did they get? They got from the UN a mandate to build a national home for the Jewish people in their ancestral homeland. This was the mandate. And they didn't do that. They did exactly the opposite. This is why Jews fought the British until 48. And a mandate by the UN is a much, much stronger thing in the international law than any other decision in the UN.
Than any resolution.
Yeah, this is why this mandate is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence of Israel. And the declaration doesn't start, Israel was created 3 years after the Holocaust. The Holocaust at that time was, a third of our people, 6 million people were butchered. Our Declaration of Independence doesn't start by saying 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust.
Right,
it starts by saying, in the land of Israel rose the people of Israel. Here we became a nation. Here we wrote the Bible. Here our culture was created. We were expelled forcibly from our land. We prayed for thousands of years to go back. And now we decided to take action. We are coming back to take our homeland. This is what Zionism is all about. It's about taking an action and going back to our ancestral homeland.
Second. Hold on. Yeah, it's a very important idea, right? It's a very important idea because when you think about it, it's like you hear all this stuff, Palestine, Palestinian people, this whole concept, and it's like, and it's a big concept. It's a huge concept. People all over the world, this, baby killers, the whole thing. And people don't realize that the concept in itself never existed. There was never a Palestinian state. There was never a Palestinian people, right? Like it was something that was invented, right? And then past that, you have to understand, well, why did they invent it then? What was the whole concept behind it? Why would the Soviet Union, why would these people get involved? Because these people saw that the Jews in the West were coming into the region. So they wanted to have a resistance from the West coming in. Wasn't a resistant, oh, we had this country, we were here, we're just innocent people, and then all of a sudden these settlers come and they just come and start ravaging. No, they came. There was Jews already living there the whole time. It's just that when the British came, they took control of the property because they went to war with the people of the Ottoman Empire who were there before, right? and they took the property and then they wanted to redistribute it and then eventually it went to United Nations and they distributed the property, said, hey, here's some for the Jews who live in here and here's some for the Arabs. And the Jews said, okay, we take the land, and the Arabs said, well, no, we reject the land because we reject what you want to give to us because we don't believe you have authority to give it to us. It's Muslim land. This is their mindset. And so this has been the whole saga for 80 years. And then now they say, oh, well, we want a two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution. They turned it down. Well, why would they turn down a two-state solution? Why would they turn it down? Why didn't they accept the property to begin with? Because if they would have gave the Palestinian people, the Arabs that live in this area, if they would have gave them their sovereignty, then they would maybe have chose to go a different direction, right? The whole thing only works because they don't have any property. It only works because they can resist and say, this is our land and you're occupying us and this is territory and this. And it's like, but it's a confusing thing. Anyways, I don't want to spend so much time on that, but it's just an introduction to the idea because I think I may have said this to you in the past, but being aware of what's going on around the world and having that mindset from a spiritual component allows a spiritual leader to be able to know where he needs to send light, what people he needs to have in mind, right? And so that concept comes, along with we're working on. Okay, hold on. All right, so we're in Miketz. So concealment, this, the whole thing, perfect, just like the video we just saw, right? All right. All right. Okay, so it says like this. Miketz. Okay. Again, we're in a leadership series, weekly Torah portion with Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks in blessed memory. He should be with us, give us clarity to understand his words with everything's from Hashem. Okay. So, and we want to have in mind all the people, all the innocent people that, want peace, and all these conflicts around the world, right? And we want to send energy to the soldiers and all the Gazan people who we saw today want peace. They want out. They're sick of what Hamas is doing to them. Okay, so Miketz, right? The power of dreams, right? In one of the greatest transformations in all literature, Joseph moves in one bound from prisoner to prime minister, right? What he says? What was it? What was it about? A complete outsider. He says, what was about Joseph, a complete outsider to the Egyptian culture, a Hebrew, a man who had for years been languishing in a jail on false charges of attempted rape, that marked him out as the leader of the greatest empire of the ancient world. And he said, what was it about Joseph? A complete outsider to the Egyptian culture, a Hebrew, a man who for many years had languished in a jail on false charges of a rape attempt, that marked him the leader of the greatest empire. He said Joseph had three gifts that many people have in isolation, but few have in combination, right? And he says the first is that he dreamed dreams. He says, initially, we do not know whether his two adolescent dreams of his brother's sleeves bowing down to him and of the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down to him are a genuine presentiment of the future greatness or merely an overreaction imagination of a spoiled child with the delusions of grandeur. Only in Parsha Miketz do we discover a vital piece of information that has been withheld from us until now. Joseph says to Pharaoh, who has also had two dreams. So it's interesting. Pharaoh had two dreams and Joseph had two dreams. He said the reason that the dream was given to Pharaoh in two forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God and God's will to do soon. He says, only in retrospect do we realize that Joseph's double dream was a sign that this too was no mere imagining. Joseph really was destined to be a leader to whom his family would bow. Second, like Sigmund Freud, many centuries later, Joseph could interpret the dreams of others, and he did so for the butler and the baker in prison. And in this parsha of Pharaoh, his interpretations were neither magical or miraculous. He says, in case of the butler and in case of the butler and the baker, he remembered that in 3 days' time it would be Pharaoh's birthday party. And he says, and it was a custom of the ruler to make a feast on his birthday party and decide the fate of certain individuals. In Britain and Queen's birthday honors continue this traditions. In Britain, okay, fine. He said it was reasonable, therefore, to assume that the butler and the baker's dreams related to the event of their unconscious hopes and fears. So it is remarkable, therefore, to assume that the butler and the baker's dreams related to this event and their unconscious hopes and fears. He said He said the case of Pharaoh's dreams, Joseph made it known ancient. He may have known ancient Egyptian traditions about 7 year famines. Nahum and Sarah quotes in Egyptian texts from the reign of King Josiah, Dejoyer in the 20th century BCE. I guess this is what this guy says. I don't know. He says, I was in distress on the great throne, and those who are in the place were in a heart's affliction from a very evil, since the now had not come in my time for the time of 7 years. In Greek. So he's bringing basically a writer or some type of king or whatever that he has quoted, some type of ruler from Egypt, and he talks about this idea of seven 7 years, whatever. And grain scant fruits were dried up, and everything was which they eat was short. He said Joseph's most impressive achievement, though, was his third gift, his ability to implement dreams, solving the problems for which they were in earlier warning. He says no sooner had he had told of the 7 year famine, he was continued without pause to provide a solution. This is what I get. He's quoting Genesis. He says, now let Pharaoh look for a discerning wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. And let Pharaoh appoint commission over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. And they should collect all the food for these good years that are coming and store it up in the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in service for the country to be used for during the 7 years of the famine, and that will come upon Egypt, so the country will not be ruined by the famine. He says we have seen. He says that in Genesis. He says we have seen Joseph, the brilliant administrator, before, both in Potiphar's house and in prison. It was his gift, demonstrating a precisely the right time that led to his appointment as viceroy of Egypt. He says, and from Joseph, therefore, we learn three principles. The first principle is dream dreams. Never be afraid to let your imagination soar. And when people come to me for advice about leadership, I will tell them to give themselves the time and space to imagine and to dream. In dreams, we discover our passion. and follow our passion is the best way to live a rewarding life. Dreaming is often thought to be impractical. Not so. It is one of the most practical things to do. There are people who spend months planning a holiday, but not even a day planning a life. He says, and they themselves have carried by the winds of chance and circumstance. He says, this is a mistake. The sages says, whomever in the Torah we find the word vayahi, he says, and it came to pass. He says it is always the prelude to tragedy. Vayahi, and he says, vayahi, a vayahi life is one in which I think they said on Sarah, different things. So he says, vayahi, the life is one in which we passively let things happen. A yehi, let it be. He says life is one in which we make things happen. And he says, and it is our dream that give us direction. Theodore Herzl, to whom more than any other person we owe the existence of the state of Israel, to whom used to say, if you will it, if you will it, it is no dream. Once I heard the wonderful story of Ellie, God, Elie Wiesel. And he says, there is a time where Sigmund Freud and Theodor Herzl live in the same district of Vienna. Fortunately, Wiesel said they never met. Can you imagine what would have happened if they had met? Theodor Herzl would have said, "Hey, I have a dream to build a Jewish state," and Freud and Sigmund Freud would have replied, "Tell me, Herzl, how long have you been having this dream?" He says, lie down on my couch and I will psychoanalyze you. Herzl would have been cured of his dream in the day that there would be no Jewish state. Fortunately, the Jewish people have never been cured of their dreams. He says the second principle is that the leaders interpret the other people's dreams. He says, and they articulate the end code, in code 8, and they find a way to express the hopes and the fears of the generation. He says Martin Luther King, "I Have a Dream" speech was about taking the hopes of African Americans and giving them wings. And it's not Joseph's dreams that made him a leader; it was Pharaoh. And he says, and our own dreams gave us the direction, as other people's dreams have give us opportunities. And he says the third principle is to find a way to implement dreams. First, to see the problem and find a way of solving it. The Kutzker Rebbe once drew attention to a difficult Rashi writing. Rashi says in Exodus chapter 18, verse 1, he says that Yathro was given the name Yithro. Because he added a passage to the Torah beginning with the words choosing among the people. This was then Yithro was saw, This was when Yithro saw Moshe leading alone and told him that he should not be doing what he was doing was not good, and he would wear himself and the people to exhaustion. Therefore, he should choose good people and delegate such a burden of leadership to them. The Kusker Rebbe points out the passage that Yithro added to the Torah did not begin. Choose from among the people. It began several verses earlier when he said, what you're doing is not good." He in answer to Custer's Rebbe was simple. Was simple. He's saying, "What are you doing is not good." In addition to the Torah, it is merely stating a problem. In addition, the addition consisted of the solution delegation. All right. A good leader, right? A good leader. The key thing over here. Well, let's just keep going. He says good leaders either are or surround themselves with problem solvers. It is easy to see that what is going wrong. What makes someone a leader is the ability to find a way of putting it right. Joseph's genius laid not in the predicting the 7 years of plenty following by the 7 years of famine, but it was the devising a system of storage which ensured the supply of the lean years and the hunger years. He says, dream, dream, understand, articulate, and dream of others, and find ways to turn dreams into reality. These three gifts are leadership. Are these three gifts are leadership and leadership Joseph's way. You got that, bro. Thoughts, reflection, Shaparsha.
I mean, it's really, expressing that potential is one thing, but you have to formulate it into action. You can have all the, dreams. That's great. That's fine. It's a beautiful step that you dream things, but if you do nothing with it, what does it mean? And, he made a beautiful point with Yosef Azadic, how not only, did he, as soon as he gave over the dream, he also gave a solution immediately. No wasted moments, nothing. He saw his opportunity through, like you said, our dreams give us direction, but other people's dreams give us opportunity. When he saw the opportunity, he got on it immediately, and that caused, the following events. So, I think it's just, we're in a world of Messiah, we're in a world of activity, so we should be active, and we should find a appropriate direction through the guidance of the Torah, through the lenses of the Torah, that allows us to maximize our potential, that allows us to, fulfill our purpose in this reality, in this life, and not only for ourselves, but for our progeny and for our communities, for everyone around us, for all of humanity is very important. So, and Rob, just I'm kind of thinking about, did we skip a section?
Oh
Did we
yeah,
skip?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
We
did,
did?
I did,
Okay,
I did
okay.
one earlier.
Okay. I missed that one. All right, so I'll go ahead and check that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's there. I just
I
did it
got you.
because I got to get this thing going. I'm trying to do like at least like
Yeah,
two a day. You know what I mean?
I got you. So, yeah, that's what I got
Or
on this.
three
It's a
even.
powerful shift. You gotta get up to seven, Rob. You gotta turn it up, man.
I say it again.
No, I was just saying, you could get up to even more than that. This is like, this Jonathan Sacks is Lord Jonathan Sacks. This is amazing. Shireen, it really is. But yeah, that's kind of what I got from it, from Yosef. He's speaking of activity, to move, to act, not to just stay stagnant, not to just stay in the realm of potential, to activate it, to actualize it by movement.
Well, one of the things. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. So one of the things just to bring out in closing is just this idea of what is the concept with Yosef with leadership, right? And one of the qualities that he talks about with Yosef is Joseph's ability to have, one to have this imagination, right, and to be able to see the potential in things. But then it was also Joseph's diligency to make things happen within the dream, like being able to go in and create the vision and then be able to deliver the business model. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that relationship of being able to create the story because he said what he needed to do to get Pharaoh to see a bigger reality. Rabbi Sacks said maybe he knew about Egyptian culture with the 7 years, maybe it was prophecy. He's trying to understand like what did Joseph get this information of the 7 years? Why 7 years? Now, I mean, Api Kabbalah, okay, it makes a lot of sense, but he's trying to understand, right? And so he brought that source. And so, but the idea is to say that Joseph created a vision that Pharaoh trusted. But it wasn't just the fact that he created the vision. He went out and he gave not just the vision, but he also gave a game plan, right? And that's when he told him, like, hey, you need to appoint somebody, right? And then from there, he was able to see Yosef. And then Yosef, once he did that, he's the one who went out and built the storage houses or told people to build storage houses to put the grain in. So they had it separated, right? And so that mechanism is what Yosef brought to the table. So he created the picture, he created the roadmap, and then he implemented the plan. And ultimately, he became, the viceroy, right? So that's one element around Yosef, right? And his ability to do that. The other element was that Yosef was able to help other people understand their dreams, right? Like when Yosef was working with people, Yosef was talking to people, he was helping them understand, like, okay, this is your dream and this is going on. Now you could take that experience that Yosef had and you could transform it into a concept of saying a leader is someone who helps someone understands their dreams. And we're using the example of Yosef, right? In that aspect. And it seems like Yosef never lost that innocence to imagine, right? To imagine himself seizing the opportunity. Like, who had the imagination say, "Hey, I can come and have the imagination that I can lead this whole thing"? Because Rabbi Sacks is trying to understand that, right? Is that what's interesting too? It sounds like when Yosef heard that Pharaoh had two dreams and how Yosef had two dreams, he said he knew it was destiny at that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like he's like, it's my time to like it's like this is like perfect fit. Anyways, the point is just saying a leader helps other people see their dreams. A leader helps people understand where they're trying to go. And what's interesting too about that too, it's always been that way in business for me. It's always been like, when I was really in the private sector, it was always about like getting people to imagine something greater. It wasn't spiritual per se, but it was spiritual, and that's really what the focus is now. It's just to really like this really disconnect from what the world wants us to believe about ourselves and seeing what God has planned for us, right? And I think that's the message that we have about Yosef is like, you can't look at life, you can't look at circumstances, you can't look at, the guy goes in jail, was got on a fake charge, guys there, his brothers, family sell him into slavery. You know what I mean? Like that, and that's the guy, and that's the guy. He doesn't even speak the language of the people. He's not even doesn't have any of the capabilities. It means nothing. And he's the one who becomes the most powerful man in the world, saves the world, granted, right? And brings his family into a position to start the process of the Geula, the redemption for all of humanity. That's Joseph. Joseph's there. When they came into Mitzrayim, that's the beginning. The clock's ticking. And this is the guy who did it. Anyways, so we don't know who we are. We don't know what we're capable of. We don't know what God has planned for us. Anyways, we'll keep everything on. Baruch atah Adonai, Leo